I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Prime Minister Netanyahu is released after being rushed to the hospital. Israel clears the red tape to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. And did you know that chimps love matzah? Well, trust us, the video evidence is just as adorable as it sounds. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Starting off with a bit of breaking news, Israeli tanks have just shelled Hamas military sites in the Gaza Strip. This is in response to an incident in which two Palestinians in the Strip lit a platform on fire near the security border with Israel. The platform is connected to a now defunct border crossing checkpoint. Even though the site is abandoned, the IDF says that any attempt to harm the security infrastructure between Israel and Gaza is taken very seriously. Army spokespeople have emphasized that this incident happened within the Strip and did not breach Israeli territory. This is likely to suppress fears that yesterday's shocking infiltration of 3 Palestinians from Gaza into Israel is more than just a fluke. Tensions between Israel and the Palestinians have reached a boiling point ahead of this weekend's protests that are scheduled to see thousands of Palestinians along the borders with Gaza and the West Bank. Yesterday's security breach remains an embarrassing and troubling incident that the army hopes not to allow a second time. Well, it looks like Prime Minister Netanyahu had a bit of a scare last night. Israel's top leader was rushed to the hospital in the middle of the night for an emergency after suffering from a high fever and a bad cough. Netanyahu was released after a short time, but his personal physician says he's apparently still battling a nasty throat infection. Netanyahu took to Twitter when news of his hospital visit broke, assuring everyone that, quote, "I'm on my way home and am certain that some rest and warm soup will sort everything out." Though a throat infection like this isn't anything life-threatening, it has reopened the debate over Netanyahu's refusal to appoint a permanent replacement, or even a temporary one, should the situation demand it. At this time, there's no official deputy prime minister, a vice prime minister, or even an interim executive who would take over for Netanyahu if he became incapacitated for whatever reason. Some speculate that the prime minister purposely keeps these offices vacant for fear of empowering a future rival. Regardless, when Netanyahu was rushed to the hospital last night, Knesset members realized that he hadn't named a temporary deputy in his absence. In other words, who would have taken over if things had taken a turn for the worse? Or if Netanyahu were merely put under sedation? Well, who knows? Well, it's official. The Israeli government has cut through the red tape and found a way to have the U.S. Embassy up and running just in time for Israel's 70th birthday in May. At first, it seemed like zoning bureaucracy might have delayed the necessary construction, but Finance Minister Moshe Kahlon is now set to sign the waiver, bypassing all the waiting. This construction will augment the current American consulate in Jerusalem and turn it into a functional embassy. U.S. security required a new escape road from the compound as well as a new security wall around the entire perimeter. Such additions didn't initially meet the proper zoning laws in that area of Jerusalem, but true to Netanyahu's promise, the National Council for Planning and Construction has made an exception to speed things along. The Prime Minister expected U.S. President Trump to be the guest of honor for the ribbon-cutting ceremony, but according to Israeli reports, that isn't in the cards. Unnamed Israeli officials say Trump has opted not to attend at all. The White House has now countered this claim and says the president is merely undecided. The controversial embassy move to Jerusalem was announced by President Trump last December, a decision met with cheers from Israeli leaders but largely condemned by the international community. During the upcoming Passover holiday, practicing Jews are forbidden from eating leavened products like bread, which is known as chametz. Well, even though not everybody follows this practice, now the Chief Rabbinate of Israel is enforcing a strict chametz ban on all public entities, including hospitals. Joining us now on the subject is Rabbi Dov Halbertal, who is the former head of the office of the Chief Rabbi of Israel and founding rabbi of the Tel Aviv International Synagogue, Rabbi Ariel Constantine. All right, thank you both for joining us. Now, let's begin. What is the problem with a chametz ban? This is a Jewish state, right?
Yeah. It is a Jewish state, and I think on the one hand, it is important to color the Jewish entity as we stated with Jewish color, meaning that we want each country has their own culture, has their own traditions, and part of our tradition and our culture is our Jewish heritage. And to have certain things that color the national identity of the Jewish people is very important. And chametz is part of that concept that we bring together the Jewish people for 1 week. And I think it's one of the few things that I think we could say are not hurting the general public, that for 1 week we can do without leavened bread and then handle the matzah, because this gives so much color to our national identity.
At the same time, though, should, secular Jews, people who don't, perhaps practice this way during Pesach, be forced to be in an environment in which they're not allowed access to, leavened
I wouldn't
products?
use the word forced. It sounds like a mafia. As you said before, we are a Jewish state. We are a Jewish state. We have to be proud with our Jewishness. And chametz is one of the
But there are also, I would like to add too, I said that, but I did not mention obviously the 20% of people living in this country who are not Jewish.
I understand. You are not only the only one. I know that's nobody enforced. We are a Jewish state. The rabbinate is part of the state. It's not, some private place. And chametz is one of the strict prohibitions in Pesach, very strict, and symbolizes a lot. The redemption, the diaspora, it symbolizes a lot. And publicly, at least publicly, we are supposed as a Jewish state to manage not to have chametz in public places. And also...
Well, I understand, hospitals don't want to lose their kosher certifications by serving Passover food on dishes that once served chametz, right? So that's kind of one of the reasons we're seeing hospitals say no, chametz is allowed to enter our hospitals here, but we're not seeing other major institutions doing the same. Can the state go ahead and essentially ban the sale of chametz countrywide, and would that be fair?
Again, I think for certain things, in general, as an American Oleh, I take the values of American civil liberties and personal rights to be able to live as you wish and live and let live as a very important value. And therefore, and I believe in general, when we establish laws that are religious law, that results in more antagonism and less observance of that law than if people come to it on their own with love and desire to connect. Because when there is a establishment dictating to them, there is a natural tendency to reject that establishment.
Well, right, which goes to why I use that term forced, because I guess it's the feeling of certain Jews perhaps who don't want to do that, and
no, not at all, not at all. I think I am also in some way liberal in the approach to non-religious people, but as a state and as a Jewish state, everybody of us has to understand. We have to understand that we are unique, and we have to be proud with our Jewishness.
Well, I think that's where the question comes in here.
And all those debates are coming out because of liberal, new liberal voices that came out only in our generation here. It was never like this. Never. They were normal. All of a sudden, chametz is a problem.
What the line is between appropriate cultural and religious preservation in this country, and obviously the religious, I guess, so-called coercion against secular and non-Jewish groups. Where is that line?
The line, I think the line is the public appeal. I mean, privately you can do whatever you want. Nobody enforced nobody. But publicly, the transportation in Shabbat, the public transportation, and the planes in Shabbat, and chametz in all over, the stores and the hospitals. And besides, I feel, as a majority here in Israel, because all the traditional people, even non-religious, are traditional. They want the tradition. I feel that I have to be respected. And for example, in hospital.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because then you could say, playing devil's advocate, obviously there are the people who are, not as religious and feel like they should be respected too, right? What is your take on this?
I think, again, along the lines of what was just said, that in the public sphere, there are certain things, if it doesn't in a severe way affect the general public, then I can understand that being part of the general culture, we could respect a minority while still promoting a majority culture. And for a week not to eat bread, I don't think is hurting. Maybe 10 days on Shabbat is something on a weekly basis that could be more of a challenge to the general public, especially the people of lower socioeconomic situation that need to get from place to place. And that could be more of a difficult situation. But for a week not to eat bread, I think people could do without. They can Atkins diet.
Well, Ramat Gan Safari, the animals are eating matzah this week. So they're at least...
We can all handle it.
Handling it, right? All right, thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Horrific events unfolding in Paris now. Earlier this week, French police began investigating the gruesome murder of Muriel Knoll. Muriel was an 85-year-old handicapped Holocaust survivor, and earlier this month she was stabbed 11 times and her apartment was set on fire. A murder that police now believe was motivated by anti-Semitism. Two suspects in this case have just been indicted for the horrific murder. Shockingly, one of the suspects was a neighbor she had actually taken care of since he was a child. That suspect had recently been released from prison for alleged sex crimes against the 12-year-old daughter of Muriel's live-in caretaker. There may be some personal history involved here, but for most, the message is clear. Horrific anti-Semitic violence has been surging in France for several years now. The French government has come under fire for failing to label and prosecute these as hate crimes in many cases. French President Emmanuel Macron has announced his resolute determination to fight against anti-Semitism in the wake of this appalling crime committed against Mrs. Knoll. French leaders, both Jewish and non-Jewish alike, are calling for countrywide protests, demanding that this kind of hatred is always called exactly what it is. The Israeli Kibbutz movement began over a century ago, and even though these socialist agricultural communities may seem outdated, many are still flourishing today because of their strong industries and businesses. Joining us now is Rafi Nevo, the head of the Kibbutz Industries Association, which wants to change the direction of the Kibbutz movement, and he's here to tell us more. All right, so tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, first of all, I'm a member. Good afternoon, first of all.
Good afternoon.
Second, I'm a member of kibbutz named Galon, which is in the south of the country, near Riyad Gat. And I'm working in the kibbutz movement and also in the Kibbutz Industry Association, which is my main activity. And I'm leading the section of innovation and entrepreneurship in the kibbutzim. And in the Kibbutz Industry Association in many ways. We're starting from helping and enabling industries to renovate themselves with regard to technologies, with regard to processes.
Right. So, I mean, when the kibbutzim movement was first started, we saw, most kibbutzim working with agriculture and having agricultural business. And we've, seen a movement towards factories, whether it's plastic factories, spice factories, you name it. And now we're seeing a lot more kibbutzim that are interested in investing the money that they've made in the startup world as well, right?
Yes.
Is that something that you focus on?
Yeah, we also focus on helping kibbutzim to invest in new companies, in startup companies, in high-tech companies from all of the sections. For this, we have the fund we established in the kibbutz movement named Mashtela, the nursery, which is also, I'm the CEO of that fund.
Wow. And
we mainly connect startup companies to kibbutzim and help kibbutzim to invest, to become partners.
I think it's important to keep in mind, especially the kibbutzim that are more, financially successful. It's a lot of money that they're dealing with and a lot of people's livelihood. So that money needs to be obviously invested in the right way, and it's not always easy to figure out how to do that. So you guys kind of help these different communities. Right? How many kibbutzim do you work with?
All of the kibbutzim, 250.
So there are 250 today.
And also 250 factories. Industries as well.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you for coming in and telling us a little bit about the work that you do. And I'm interested to see kind of where the movement goes, right?
Yes.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
It looks like some religious Jews are gearing up for the Passover holiday because they've just held a religious animal sacrifice near the old city's Temple Mount complex. ILTV's Aaron Porras joins us with more. Now, Aaron, this isn't the first event like this, is it?
No, not at all. And in fact, this event was given court approval to be held. It was a very large to-do. There were hundreds of people who arrived. They slaughtered 2 Paschal lambs, to eat it for the Passover holidays. I think really the only difference here was that it was held at the Davidson Center, which is just below the Temple Mount.
Right now, animal rights issues aside here, because those are definitely legitimate concerns, but not the focus here today.
Right.
I understand that holding this ceremony in the Davidson Center is now angering Temple Mount officials, right?
Right. Basically, the idea in Judaism is, to get as close to the Temple Mount as possible. The Temple Mount is the holiest place in Judaism, but now the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is holy to Muslims, sits atop it. So really, from the Palestinian side of the narrative, Israel has been trying to take over the Temple Mount for years and change the status quo, which is that nobody but Muslims can pray there or even has, full access to the site.
All right. Well, what about Land Day, the anniversary of, Israel expropriating land in 1976 in the Galilee? That's coinciding with Passover. On Friday this year, right?
Yeah, and it's right to bring that up too.
Yeah.
That's another worry, really, both from the Palestinian side, because they're saying, all of this is all coming together. It's all on Land Day too, and then you also have they're coming. You have in Gaza on the border, all these Palestinians, hundreds of Palestinians gathering for a massive protest that Israel might think might be violent. And then you have also Palestinian officials at the Temple Mount who are also saying, that this is unacceptable, that they didn't even think the court had the authority to allow, the sacrifice to occur there. So.
All right. Well, I guess we're just going to have to wait and hope that, these protests that we see are indeed a peaceful sit-in, as Palestinian leaders are saying. And thank you for your report.
Yeah.
All right. Did you know that monkeys love matzah? It's true, guys. The Passover staple, lacking in yeast and some say flavor, is a yearly tradition at the Ramat Gan Safari. The animals gobble down matzah so fast, you'd almost think they were looking forward to it. Here in the Holy Land, we humans sub out leavened products for matzah when Passover rolls around. The week-long holiday commemorates the Jewish exodus from Pharaoh's rule in ancient Egypt, and the matzah symbolizes the unleavened bread Jews ate in their haste to leave Egypt. Well, the animals here in Ramat Gan may not know about that tradition, heck, they may not even be Jewish, but it sure doesn't seem like they care. The chimps, lemurs, elephants, and gorillas just started chowing down on matzah instead of bread. The safari would like to stress that this is a treat that's merely a small addition to their regular diet of fruits and veggies. On top of matzah, the park animals will be getting a special corn and bean mix that's kosher for Passover as well. So hey, if they can do it, we can do it. With just under 3 weeks left before Israel's 70th anniversary, there are tons of special ceremonies to attend. Well, one unique event is looking at the history of Israel through the eyes of those who fought to protect the nation. And here with more is Doron Polak, the curator of the IDF Veterans Association Tzevet Yotzer project. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so tell us a little bit about what Tzevet Yotzer does.
Well, actually, it's a very large exhibition, art exhibition of those retired officers and soldiers. And in a way, we are not expecting military people to create and to work with photography, with pictures. And we discover a new world of the other side of their life.
Right.
They're creating, and
are these artists? I mean, people who have served in the IDF and are artists as a career, or they're just people who are doing this for their own enjoyment?
Most of them are amateur artists.
Wow, okay.
And it's they create on the second career.
Yeah.
But it's a good level, I have to say.
This is amazing. I mean,
yeah, it's very nice, the sculptures, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's a very nice way to, I would say, to express the new phase of their life. So this organization took a nice role in presenting those people who are related to the military, to the wars.
And we see a lot of, this is multimedia. There's paintings, there's photography, kind of a mix. It's just, it's interesting that you call this amateur, because I would like to think that I'm amateur and I would never be able to do any of what we're seeing here. So tell us, how many entries do you have in this gallery, and where can we come and see it?
Yeah, we have 100, almost 100 artists. About 25 are writers who wrote books and poetry, but about 75 visual artists joined it. We selected, by the way. The selected works that you see here are after a kind of curating. But again, I have to say that I was also very surprised to see the level of the artists, because it was really, really, I define it as a frank process. It was like people brought their own life, their own feelings.
Well, here's my final question for you. Where and when can we see this exhibition? Because I know I want to check it out.
Okay, it opens on the 29th of April at the Givatayim Theater, which is located really as part of Tel Aviv. And it's open to all the public.
Beautiful.
And it will be at least a month, and we expect all of you to come.
All right, well, I'd love to check this out. I think this will be a very interesting perspective of Israel. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, Israeli fashionistas may never have to go online to shop again. After years of rumors and promises, American apparel brand Urban Outfitters has finally opened a store right here in the Holy Land. And ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here with all of the details. Hi, Emmanuel.
Hi, Natasha. Well, like you said it all. I'm so excited about this.
I think everybody is.
I think everyone is. I'm an urban addict. When I grew up there, I was constantly shopping there, and they just opened up their first store in the big fashion center in Ashdod. It was originally supposed to be in Dizengoff Center, which would have been a little bit more convenient.
Yeah, it's a little surprising that that was
where the center is, right? It's one of the biggest malls they were supposed to have in Dizengoff Center, but I think they did me and you and the rest of the fashion people in Tel Aviv a favor and put it in a little bit further from Tel Aviv.
We're not going to be spending as much money this weekend.
Yes, but don't speak too soon, because apparently Dizengoff Center will have its own Urban Outfitters soon. 3 more stores are about to pop up, so clearly they're, becoming successful.
It's interesting. Like you said, it is a blessing in disguise that there is an Urban within walking distance of my home. But Israelis who have never traveled outside the U.S., they've been clamoring for years. They've wanted Urban to open a shop here.
And now Fox, which is one of the biggest fashion labels here in Israel, it's the company that's responsible for bringing Urban Outfitters to Israel. They just signed on a 10-year franchising deal. The first 4 years are worth, they have something signed on 40 million shekels. So I'm almost positive this is going in the right direction, and this is definitely, a brand that needs to be here in Israel. It's definitely the style. It's the street fashion of Tel Avivians.
Well, it's interesting to see what they're going to actually carry, if it's kind of garnered more towards an Israeli audience, because a lot of the big brands that you see here in Israel, have a little bit of a different selection of clothing, because it's a hot country. We wear different things than we would wear in London or New York.
Definitely.
But this is exciting, and I'm very happy to hear about this. So thanks 100%. For joining us and telling us about this, Emmanuel.
Thank you.
All right, millions of people all over the world use an EpiPen to save themselves when life-threatening allergic reactions strike. The problem is an attack can happen at any time, and not everyone who needs one always carries their EpiPen. Sometimes they even forget. Well, luckily for those people, a new Israeli app is setting up a one-of-a-kind social network that might just save their lives. The app is called EpiMata, and it's the first ever social network that connects people who have special medical needs. Think of it as Uber or Lyft for people who use an EpiPen. Users activate the app if they suddenly find themselves in desperate need of an injection from an EpiPen. The system uses GPS tracking to locate nearby users who have their EpiPen with them and helps them get to the patient as fast as possible so that they can give them the shot. Israel's emergency medical service, Magen David Adom, is one of the creators of this incredible idea. They're the first to admit that waiting for an ambulance to bring an EpiPen sometimes just isn't ideal. For now, this app is only available here in Israel, but it already has hundreds of users. And once the field tests are complete, I wouldn't be surprised if this life-saving app finds its way to the rest of the world soon. Now it's time for our Hebrew word of the day. Spring is finally in the air, and with it comes spring cleaning, blooming flowers, and of course, pollen. So today's Hebrew word is allergiot, which means, you guessed it, allergies. Well, unless you're Superman, everyone suffers from allergiot or allergies. Though I guess you could say Superman has allergiot for kryptonite. Mold, mildew, grass, and pollen are some of the most typical allergiot out there. But my heart goes out to people with pet and animal allergiot, because that means they can probably never have a cuddly dog or a fluffy kitty. That's terrible, terrible. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast on that note. Tonight is expected to be warm with a low of 59 or 15 degrees Celsius, but keep your umbrellas around because there's a high chance of overnight thunderstorms. Tomorrow should be a little sunnier with a high of about 68 or 20 degrees Celsius, and with a chance of light showers throughout the day. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.5 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Natasha Kirchak, and thanks for watching.